Hey Exiles, Chronic Painless here with another pre-league update to the Blade Vortex 319 League Starter Build Guide. In this video, I'll be doing a tier list to rank how the Cole BV Elementalist / Occultist feels when farming Juice League mechanics in the endgame. To be absolutely clear, this list is not my ranking of which content I think will give the best profit per hour in the Lake of Kalandra League. What I'm really ranking in this video is my BV build itself, and how easily and efficiently it can farm each piece of content. That way, you can decide for yourself if it sounds like the right build for you based on the content that you enjoy or that you think will be the most profitable. Generally, this build excels under 3 conditions. The first is that monsters are spawning on top of us. Because our damage is happening constantly in all directions all around us, but not that far away from us, we much prefer engaging with monsters who spawn inside our damage zone. The second condition is that kill speed is more important than move speed. This build does not have exceptional raw movement speed. However, it makes up for that with lots of damage, explosions, and not needing to cast very often, giving it strong clear speed overall. Because of this, we much prefer content where running fast isn't as important as killing fast. Finally, we want lots of monsters to kill and to be able to kill them fast. This build uses no projectiles, strikes, or anything that is limited in the number of targets it can affect. In fact, because it creates explosions so easily, it can often clear areas with more monsters faster than areas with fewer monsters. We also don't like waiting around for immunity phases to wear down, since our first layer of defense is freezing our enemies. So with that in mind, let's start with the S tier. First, we have Expedition. I think this is the most obviously S tier farm for the build. Expedition checks all the boxes. The monsters spawn right on top of us, we can't make the explosions happen faster with more movement speed, and the monster density is fairly high, especially with some pack-sized suffixes on your remnants. Speaking of remnants, we also fear almost none of the remnant downsides, with the obvious exception of cold damage immunity. Hits cannot be critical strikes, and enemies cannot be chilled or frozen, are dangerous in the early parts of the league, but eventually we will overwhelm them with our damage. Next up in the S tier is Harvest, which also has monsters that spawn right on top of us and much more efficiency to be gained from high kill speed than high movement speed. Sure, you have to run between the plots, but you'll spend almost no time doing that compared to fighting the Harvest monsters on a build that doesn't kill them as fast as ours. Moving on, Blight is the next mechanic to make it into the S tier. The monsters might not spawn right on top of us, but it's pretty close to it in a lot of layouts. Plus, movement speed doesn't make the encounter go any faster, and our explosions chain amazingly well on the densely packed mobs. Rounding out the S tier are Ritual and Ambush. Once again, the monsters are spawning on top of us, and it's easy to see how fast killing is far more important than fast running for these mechanics, since they are both contained in such small areas. Moving down to the A tier, we find Essence and Metamorph, which would be S tier but for the fact that they have so few monsters to kill. It's not that we struggle against single targets, it's just not our specialty the way explosions are, which leaves these two mechanics in the A tier. Next up is Delve, which like Essence and Metamorph is being held back from S tier by just one small deficiency. Because the cart's speed is tied to our own, long cart paths benefit greatly from high raw movement speed. So even though we absolutely crush the nodes, getting there is suboptimal. Harbingers would also be S tier, but for the fact that the King Harby can damage us despite being immune to damage. In the early parts of the build especially, our primary layer of defense is freezing and or killing monsters before they can hurt us. So not being able to stop the King Harby from tossing his lightning balls can feel awkward sometimes. The new Beyond and Scourge combo and Delirium Orbs finish off the A tier because they both suffer from the same drawback of occasionally having to backtrack to kill monsters. We'd rather just keep blasting and taking advantage of the fact that we don't have to cast very often to maintain maximum damage output. Backtracking is awkward because it usually means we have to do an extra cast or two of BV while not fighting anything, which doesn't feel great. Down in B tier, we find the content where raw move speed starts becoming just as important as kill speed, if not more so. Legion, Betrayal, and Incursion all take place in much larger areas compared to the content in the higher tiers, so moving fast becomes more valuable. Also in B tier is Abyss, which can't necessarily be made faster with more movement speed, but can certainly punish lack of raw movement speed if the Abyss takes a wrong turn and forces you to choose between substantial backtracking or abandoning the Abyss. Finally, we have Rogue Exiles, who I won't waste any more of your time talking about. In C tier, I put Heist and Delirium Mirrors. I think these are the mechanics that punish lack of raw movement speed the most. Heist is full of long periods of running with little killing, and the monsters guarding the exit doors are definitely not spawning on top of us. It might even be D tier, but Veil BV does so much work that putting it below C would have been unfair. As for Delirium Mirrors, this build is more than fine for the blasting part, but if you're juicing to the point where you have to run around and loot after the map, then you'll definitely be feeling the drawbacks of the mediocre move speed. In D tier is Bestiary, because waiting for the beasts to get captured while not being able to damage them is awkward, and can also result in backtracking if Einhar is lagging behind. Last, and certainly least, is Torment in the F tier. I don't know if anyone actually farms this, but if you do, you definitely don't want to be playing BV. We have a terrible time trying to avoid doing damage, so waiting for spirits to do their thing is the real torment. That's all for this video. Please remember that these are not the rankings for most profitable farm. These are the rankings for which content is the best fit for the strengths of my Blade Vortex League Starter build. Sadly, I know that no matter how many times I make this disclaimer, I'm going to get comments about why is Heist in C tier when it's so profitable, but what can you do? If you have an actual comment or question, please don't hesitate, and you can always check me out on Twitch or join the Discord for more BV discussion. And as always, stay painless.